Have you ever shared something personal only to feel exposed, judged, or quietly undermined afterward? In a world addicted to oversharing, where people broadcast their dreams, doubts, and deepest wounds for likes and fleeting approval, the cost of speaking too soon is higher than ever. Not everyone who listens is safe. Not everyone who smiles means well. And sometimes what you reveal becomes the very thing used against you. The Stoics knew this long before social media existed. They taught that a wise person protects their inner world not out of fear, but out of respect for themselves, for their peace, for the sanctity of their path. Guard your thoughts, they warned, for once spoken, they belong to the world, not to you. This isn't a lesson in silence. It's a lesson in discernment. In today's video, we'll walk through 10 powerful truths, secrets that are best held close, not because you owe the world nothing, but because you owe yourself protection. These are not strategies of paranoia, but shields of inner strength. So take a breath, stay close, and as we begin, ask yourself, what is worth protecting in your life, and are you protecting it well? 1. Guard your plans. Have you ever noticed how easily people give away their future? They speak of their ambitions like it's already real, as if naming the dream somehow brings it closer. But what they don't realize is this: every time you talk about your long-term plans, you trade a little of their power for temporary attention. The more you speak, the less you move. The more you explain, the more you expose. And what is exposed too soon is often weakened before it even has the strength to grow. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus once said, "Be silent for the most part, or speak only what is necessary." He wasn't advocating secrecy out of fear, he was protecting the sacred, because your plans, your deepest aspirations, are sacred. They're not content. They're not meant to be put on display for likes or approval. They are contracts between the person you are now and the person you are willing to become. And the more people you invite into that private space, the more room you give to doubt, to envy, to subtle sabotage. Think about it. How many times have you told someone you were going to change your life, start a business, move to a new city, lose the weight, write the book, only to be met with polite skepticism? They don't mean harm, but their words land like stones in your soil. Are you sure? That's risky. I knew someone who tried that and failed. And suddenly, where you once felt clarity, now there's hesitation. Where there was momentum, now there's friction. Not enough to make you quit, but enough to slow you down. That's the quiet death of a dream, when it drowns not in failure, but in noise. Noise from others, and noise from within. Silence, on the other hand, builds strength. When you don't feel the need to announce every step, you free yourself from defending the journey. You give your actions time to take root, out of sight, protected from judgment. Like a seed in the dark soil, it doesn't need an audience, it needs time. And when that seed breaks through the surface, it's no longer fragile, it's earned the right to be seen. There's a kind of spiritual armor in keeping your long-term plans private. You're not hiding, you're focusing. You're not being mysterious, you're being deliberate. Because not every fire should be shown before it's ready to give light. Some things must burn in silence before they're strong enough to withstand the wind. So, the next time you feel the urge to share your plans, whether in conversation, on social media, or even to someone close, pause. Ask yourself, am I sharing this to move the plan forward, or just to satisfy my ego? If it's the latter, let it be. Hold it close. Let progress be your proof. Let your transformations speak for itself. Because the world doesn't need another promise. It needs your undeniable results. And your future self will thank you for protecting what mattered while it was still fragile. Now, let's move deeper, because the second thing you should never expose is even more easily misunderstood. 2. Protect your soft spots. There's a certain strength in knowing where you are still soft, still healing, and choosing to keep those places protected, not because you are ashamed, not because you fear judgment, but because you understand something that many overlook. Your vulnerability is sacred, and what is sacred should be guarded with care, not scattered at the feet of anyone willing to listen. We live in a time that confuses oversharing with honesty, where people are praised for putting their wounds on display, as if bleeding in public proves you're brave. But Stoicism teaches a different kind of courage, the kind that doesn't beg to be seen, a quiet kind, a powerful kind, the kind that faces suffering not by performing it, but by working through it, privately, patiently, and with dignity. Not everyone who hears your pain will hold it with compassion. Some will remember it, some will repeat it, some will use it against you, not to comfort, but to control. That's the hard truth. You open your heart thinking you'll find healing, and instead you find your struggle turned into gossip, your doubts turned into labels, your insecurity turned into leverage. That's why the wise are selective. They don't speak to be pitied. They don't confess just to feel lighter. They wait. They choose carefully. As Epictetus said, know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. Knowing yourself means recognizing not only your strengths, but also your unfinished places, the ones still under construction, still raw. And it means not offering those unfinished places up to anyone who hasn't earned the right to hold them gently. Because let's be honest, have you never shared something personal, something vulnerable, and then felt that shift? The awkward silence, the forced advice, or worse, the judgment wrapped in concern. Maybe you mentioned your fear of not being enough, and months later it came back in an argument. Maybe you told someone about your financial stress, and suddenly they started treating you differently. These aren't exceptions, these are patterns. The Stoics weren't emotionless. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most reflective men in history, filled his journals with thoughts he never shared. He didn't record those entries to impress anyone. He wrote them to strengthen himself. His writing wasn't performance, it was purification. His weakness, his doubts, his flaws, they were not offered up to the world. They were tended to, refined, and transformed in silence. That's what real inner work looks like. You're allowed to be insecure, you're allowed to hurt, but you're not obligated to explain that pain to people who haven't earned your trust. Healing doesn't require an audience. In fact, it often demands the opposite. Solitude, discernment, protection. So before you speak that hidden truth, before you give someone the map to your most tender places, ask yourself, what am I really hoping to receive? Comfort, validation, relief. And then ask, what will it cost me if they don't respond with care? The Stoic answer is not to suppress. It's to guard, to channel, to carry your pain like a craftsman carries fire, not to scorch, but to refine. Let your healing be your strength, not your story. And when you finally emerge, let it be your presence that speaks, not your past. Now, let's move forward. Because the third secret is not about what you reveal, but who you reveal it to. 3. Keep finances private. Money speaks, even when you don't. Whether you have very little or more than most, the moment you reveal your financial situation, you invite a kind of attention that rarely stays neutral. Some will admire you, some will envy you, others might pity you, or worse, try to use you. And that's exactly why the Stoic learns to keep his financial life private, not out of shame, not out of pride, but out of strategy. Seneca, one of the wealthiest Stoics in history, once said, "Wealth is the slave of a wise man and the master of a fool." He wasn't speaking in metaphor. He lived it. He understood that money doesn't just buy comfort, it changes how people see you, and more dangerously, it changes how you see yourself. When you speak openly about financial struggle, some will begin to treat your time as less valuable. Your boundaries become negotiable in their eyes. When you share that you're doing well, others may feel entitled to what you have, or assume you didn't earn it. Both narratives are false, but that won't stop them from shaping how people approach you. Suddenly, you're no longer a person. You're a bank account, a symbol, a comparison point for someone else's inner story. And there's another risk, far quieter. Talking about your money, especially in times of gain, can awaken the ego. You begin to seek recognition for your effort, craving validation for your success. You start comparing. You look sideways instead of inward. And soon, you're measuring your self-worth by numbers that have nothing to do with your character. That's the trap. Because whether you're counting coins or stacking investments, money will always be unstable. The Stoic knows this. He knows fortune changes. He knows the market is a wave, not a rock. So he builds on virtue, not wealth. He walks through life knowing that peace doesn't come from abundance or lack. It comes from clarity, detachment, and self-respect. In practical terms, this means you don't owe anyone an explanation for how much you make, how much you save, or how much you've lost. You don't need to talk about your next financial goal. You don't need to justify your purchases or prove your humility by showcasing your frugality. Because once the world knows, the world starts expecting. And when people expect things from you, your actions begin bending to meet their ideas, not your truth. The real freedom is not just financial, it's internal. It's being able to pursue wealth without performing it, to endure hardship without broadcasting it, to make decisions without a crowd commenting from the sidelines. Silence, in this case, is not secrecy. It's sovereignty. So protect that privacy. Let your finances be a conversation between you and your conscience. Let your contentment grow quietly. Let your wealth or your rebuilding speak only when necessary, because in the end, the less they know, the freer you move. And next, we turn to something even more intimate than money, your private relationships, and the damage done when they're placed on public display. 4. Give without noise. True kindness doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't ask to be filmed, framed, or followed. It flows quietly, like water beneath the surface, nourishing, unseen, and natural. The Stoics taught that virtue is its own reward. You act rightly not because it will be noticed, but because your character has been shaped to do what is just. And yet today, even compassion has become content. Every good deed is one click away from becoming a performance. We live in a world where giving's been turned into branding, where helping someone can feel incomplete unless it's shared, where generosity is often followed by a caption, a hashtag, and a stream of reactions. But when your kindness needs applause to feel real, you've lost something precious. You've traded substance for appearance. Marcus Aurelius once asked, "When you've done good and another has benefited, why do you still look for a third thing, credit?" That's where many fall, not in failing to act, but in failing to stay silent afterward. Because when kindness is done to be seen, it stops being kindness. It becomes ego. It becomes image. And suddenly, you're not helping for them, you're helping for you. That shift is subtle, but dangerous. The Stoic sees it clearly and walks the other way. He gives when no one is watching. He helps because his principles demand it, not because it makes him look noble. And when it's done, he moves on, No recounting, no praise-seeking, no lingering sense of moral superiority. But the philosophical lesson has a very practical side too. Not everyone welcomes your goodness with open arms. Some will question your motives. Others will begin to expect it, not as a gift, but as a habit, as something you owe. And once generosity turns into obligation, kindness becomes currency. You're no longer free. You're now managing expectations, protecting your reputation, trying not to disappoint your audience. And that's another danger, the performance trap. When your identity becomes wrapped around being the helpful one, the giver, the rescuer, you may keep giving long after you've run dry. You help when you're tired. You say yes when you mean no. You stretch yourself thin, not because it's right, but because it's expected. But Stoicism doesn't call you to exhaust yourself. It calls you to act with integrity, and part of that is knowing when to serve and when to step back. Silence breaks the cycle. When you help without telling, you preserve the intent. You keep your kindness clean, free of ego and expectation. You remember that you're not the hero in every story. Sometimes you're just someone walking by with an umbrella, offering shelter in a stranger's storm. That's enough. You don't need your name on it. You don't need it to go viral. You just give and keep walking. Seneca once wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." He didn't say to record it. He didn't say to share it, just to do it. So the next time you catch yourself reaching for validation after a good deed, pause. Ask yourself, am I sharing this to inspire others or to be admired by them? That difference matters, because real virtue isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself. It just is. Let your kindness move like a quiet ripple. Let it reach farther than your voice ever could. And as we move ahead, we'll uncover another silence worth protecting, the one surrounding your most private relationships. 5. Heal the home in silence. Home is meant to be a refuge, a place where we're allowed to be flawed, to breathe, to fall short and still belong. It's where love shows up in quiet acts, not always polished, but persistent. But the moment we take the tensions of that sacred space and air them out before the world, we risk turning healing into spectacle. What was once a bruise shared in private becomes a wound pulled apart in public. And the people we claim to love become characters in a story the outside world was never meant to read. A wise person doesn't fix the home by exposing it. They protect the peace by protecting the circle. When you share family struggles with people who haven't earned the right to hear them, you give strangers permission to observe, judge, and even rewrite your experience. Some will gossip, others will give hollow advice. Many will filter your story through their own bitterness, making what was already complicated feel impossible. Epictetus warned us not to hand over our peace to forces we cannot control. Gossip is one of them. Public opinion is another. When you speak of a private conflict to the wrong audience, you invite distortion. They don't know your history. They don't carry your love. They won't be there for the reconciliation, only the retelling. And when you grow past the pain, they'll still remember the version of the person you described in anger. You may forgive, but they won't forget. This is how stories become prisons. You vent about your sibling, your parent, your partner. You're hurting, and maybe you needed to speak. But once it's out there, it sticks. And even if the relationship heals, those around you continue to treat your loved one like the villain of a story they were never part of. That's not just unfair, it's damaging. It limits your family's ability to grow because they are being watched through a lens they never asked for. Now, this doesn't mean you carry everything alone. Silence isn't the same as suppression, but the Stoic learns to choose his counsel wisely. You speak to those who have earned your trust, those with patience, discretion, and a heart for unity. Not everyone deserves access to your inner conflict. Some ears amplify pain, some twist it. Only a few will hold it with care. Those few, they're rare and they're enough. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In family, that means even the conflict can be the path to deeper connection if you let it. But that path is delicate. It's not meant to be trampled by outsiders bringing their judgments. Growth in a family needs space. It needs privacy. It needs room to stumble and recover without an audience applauding or criticizing every move. So protect that space. Speak to the person involved, not the crowd. Heal within before you narrate outward. Let your peace speak louder than your complaints. Let people feel the strength of your home, not through stories of dysfunction, but through the quiet resilience you carry. Because what you guard with silence, you preserve with love. And next, we'll talk about another thing best kept close, the sacredness of your inner beliefs and what happens when you offer them to the wrong audience. 6. Let beliefs speak through action. In a time where everyone feels the need to speak louder to be right, the truly wise take the opposite path, not because they lack certainty, but because they understand that truth doesn't require noise. Your beliefs, your values, your principles are not decorations for debate or banners for applause. They are roots, and roots grow best in silence, beneath the surface, away from those who argue to win, not to understand. Stoicism, and nearly every great philosophy across time, has warned us against turning wisdom into spectacle. Lao Tzu once said, "Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know." Marcus Aurelius echoed the same, not in words, but in the way he lived. He didn't preach Stoicism, he practiced it. His calm under pressure, his kindness in power, his stillness in chaos, that was the philosophy. Not a slogan, not a performance, just a way of being. Let your life speak before your mouth does. Let how you handle difficulty, how you treat people, how you carry yourself when no one is watching, say everything that needs to be said. Because the moment you start defending your beliefs too often, too loudly, something shifts. It becomes less about living with integrity and more about being seen as someone who has it. Your philosophy turns into a script, and every comment, every post becomes a scene for validation or dominance. And slowly, without noticing, your beliefs become reactive, shaped more by opposition than contemplation. Instead of standing still in what you know, you begin bending to what others question. You explain too much, you justify, you debate. And the deeper truth of your path gets lost in the noise. The Stoic doesn't chase approval. He doesn't rush to correct others or prove he's awake. He simply is. He moves through the world with inner clarity. He understands that you don't influence people by arguing them into agreement. You influence them by embodying something solid, something they feel without needing explanation. And that feeling can't be faked. It can only be lived. There's another danger to oversharing your beliefs. The more you talk about them, the more people begin to project expectations onto you. Suddenly, you're not free to question, to grow, or to change your mind because someone is holding you to what you said last year or last week. Real philosophy is alive. It evolves as you do. But that freedom is lost when you lock yourself inside an image you felt pressured to maintain. That's why there's humility in keeping your beliefs close. It's a reminder that you're still learning, still stumbling, that maybe the purpose of the path is not to be loud, but to be honest. The man who truly understands doesn't need to be heard. He listens more than he speaks. He honors silence because that's where clarity grows. So don't be in a hurry to explain what you believe. Don't try to impress anyone with quotes or debates. Just live it. Let the peace you carry, the choices you make, the love you extend, speak for themselves. And those who truly pay attention, they'll know. Even if they never say a word, they'll feel it. And as we move forward, we'll explore another silence that protects you, the silence around your personal goals, and how speaking them too soon can make them weaker before they've had a chance to grow. 7. Keep love sacred. The quietest loves are often the ones that endure, not because they're flawless, but because they're protected. In an age where every moment is curated, posted and consumed, true intimacy has become a rare and sacred thing. A wise person understands that love, to flourish, needs space, not just physical, but emotional and spiritual space. And the more eyes you invite into your relationship, even passively, the more that space begins to shrink. When you share too much about your romantic life, whether it's your joy, your struggles, or your private routines, you hand over something precious to an audience that hasn't earned the right to hold it. You invite opinions from people who don't understand the full picture. You give weight to commentary that doesn't come from care, only curiosity, and that noise over time begins to interfere with the signal between two hearts. One post, one comment, one comparison. Suddenly the focus shifts from connection to perception, from building something real to managing an image of something that looks real. The Stoics warned us about the danger of attachment to external validation. Marcus Aurelius never needed to prove his devotion in the public square. He understood that love, like virtue, speaks loudest when it's silent. You don't measure its strength by how many people admire it, but by how deeply it's rooted when no one is watching. True love isn't a show. It's a commitment built in the quiet moments, the conversations before sleep, the silent understanding during hardship, the laughter that no one else hears. These are not scenes for an audience. They're the unseen foundations that make love real. The more attention you give to how others perceive your relationship, the less presence you bring to the relationship itself, and the more fragile it becomes. And there's a cost when things go wrong. If your love has been public, then so is the pain. Now, when you're hurting, you're not only managing your own healing, you're also managing everyone else's curiosity. You feel the pressure to explain, to defend, to maintain a version of the story that no longer reflects your truth. Healing becomes harder, not because the bond is broken, but because it's no longer yours alone to mend. Even when things go right, the danger remains. If your sense of connection is fueled by likes, comments, and public approval, then love turns into a performance. You begin to chase applause instead of peace. You start fearing stillness because stillness isn't shareable. You lose the joy of private connection because it isn't loud enough to be noticed. But the Stoic doesn't need love to be noticed. He only needs it to be true. He cherishes the mystery, the stolen glance, the inside joke, the kind gesture that no one else will ever see. He protects it, not because it's weak, but because it's sacred. And sacred things should be guarded, not displayed. So if you want a love that grows, let it grow in silence. Let it breathe without pressure. Let it belong to the two of you, not to the world. Because in the end, the less others know, the more space your love has to become something real, something that doesn't need applause, explanation, or defense. And next, we'll talk about the wisdom of keeping your acts of self-discipline private, how your quiet efforts to master yourself speak louder than any declaration ever could. 8. Forgive without an audience. There are some things that lose power the moment they're spoken aloud, and forgiveness is one of them, not because it's weak, but because it's sacred. And sacred things are not meant to be displayed, they're meant to be lived. The quieter the forgiveness, the more complete the freedom. A wise person doesn't forgive to appear enlightened. He forgives to reclaim his peace. He understands that to hold on to resentment is to remain shackled by someone else's mistake. And no one imprisons you quite like the emotions you refuse to release. The Stoics were relentless about this truth. They taught that resentment is a form of self-torture. Epictetus warned that it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. When you choose to forgive, you're not declaring that what happened was acceptable. You're choosing to stop reliving it. You're choosing clarity over chaos. But here's the thing. Real forgiveness doesn't need a microphone. It doesn't need a post. It doesn't need applause. In fact, the more you feel the urge to announce it, the less likely it is that you've truly done it. Think about it. When someone says, "I've moved on," or "I forgave them," and they say it loudly, what are they really doing? Are they freeing themselves, or are they trying to control the narrative? Are they letting go, or are they quietly insisting, "Look how noble I am"? The Stoic sees through this. He knows that the ego loves moral superiority. It wants to be praised for letting go, but real strength needs no recognition. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. So forgiveness isn't a sign you've become soft. It's a sign you've become sovereign. You don't need to shout. You don't need them to know. Your silence is the proof. It says, without words, "I am no longer carrying what you gave me. I've put it down. I've moved forward." And when you do that, when you forgive in silence, you break the chain. You stop waiting for an apology that may never come. You stop feeding a narrative that keeps you stuck. You stop allowing your past to narrate your present. Forgiveness doesn't mean you forget. It doesn't mean you open the door to the same harm. It's not permission, it's peace. It's the quiet decision to stop being ruled by something you can't change. It's saying, "This ends with me," without ever needing to speak it aloud. So, the next time you feel tempted to share your act of forgiveness, pause. Ask yourself who it's really for. Because when it's real, it won't need an audience. It will show up in the way you sleep better, in the way your energy returns, in the way you stop reacting to old triggers. That's the evidence. That's the revolution. And whether they notice or not doesn't matter. Because you didn't forgive them for them. You forgave them for you. And now we'll step even further inward, to a space even more personal, your ambitions, and why protecting them from outside eyes may be the key to truly fulfilling them. 9. Grow quietly. Real growth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't begin with a post or a speech or a caption that says, "I've changed." Because if you've truly changed, you don't need to say it. It will show in how you breathe through pressure, in how you remain calm where you once collapsed, in how you respond with clarity when chaos tries to pull you back. There's an ego that hides inside the language of transformation. It says, "Look at me. Look how healed I am." But growth that needs to be witnessed isn't growth, it's performance. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, wrote his personal reflections in a journal never meant to be published. He didn't write to prove his virtue. He wrote to face his flaws. That's what real growth looks like. Not loud, not polished, but honest and private. You don't need to talk about how much you've changed. Just change. When that old trigger shows up, stay calm. When someone tests your boundaries, hold firm. When the same storm returns, meet it with more grace than before. That's how you speak without speaking. That's how transformation becomes truth. And here's the deeper reason for keeping it to yourself. When you share too soon, you risk shaping your journey for others instead of for yourself. You start editing your growth to fit the expectations of those watching. You skip steps, you smooth out the struggle, and in doing so, you lose the honesty of the process. Growth is fragile, it's sacred, and it needs protection, because not everyone watching you grow wants you to succeed. Some watch to compare, some to compete, some to keep you locked in who you used to be. But when you grow in silence, you grow freely, like roots, deep, quiet, unseen, until one day you move through life with a strength no one saw coming. And now we turn to the final secret, one that holds all the others in place, your vision for the future and why the world doesn't need to know until it's already real. 10. Honor your pain in private. Pain carries a sacred weight, and not everyone is worthy to hold it with you. In a world that turns suffering into spectacle, where trauma is broadcast for attention and every wound is dressed in hashtags, the truly strong choose something rarer. They carry their pain with dignity, not by suppressing it, not by pretending it never happened, but by protecting it, by giving it the silence it deserves, the reverence it commands. The Stoics never denied pain. They just refused to let it consume their identity. Epictetus, who lived much of his life in chains, didn't seek pity, he sought transformation. His teachings weren't born from numbness, but from endurance. He didn't use pain to gain sympathy. He used it to find clarity. Because when pain is respected, it becomes power. But when it's handed over too soon or to the wrong audience, it becomes performance. And that's when it becomes dangerous. Your pain is like a language only you truly speak. The moment you offer it up for others to interpret, you lose a piece of it. Not because people are cruel, but because it's not theirs to carry. Some will dismiss it, others will twist it. And some will remember you only as the version of yourself that was bleeding, even long after you've healed. That's why the wise don't share pain carelessly. They share it with those who have earned their trust, with those who know how to hold suffering without judgment or control. Even then, only in the right season, only in the right way, pain becomes power when it becomes fuel, not identity. If you stay attached to the story of how you were hurt, you'll keep walking into rooms as the victim. But if you carry the lesson, not the wound, it turns into something sacred, something that sharpens your mind, strengthens your will, and softens your heart. So when the urge rises to spill your pain into someone's hands, pause. Ask, are they safe? Are they wise? Will they hold this or use it? If not, keep walking. Let your pain shape you, not expose you. It's a fire, and it should warm you, not burn you. Some truths are meant to be protected, not performed. In a world that rewards exposure, the real strength is in knowing what to keep sacred. The Stoics remind us that silence is not weakness, it is choice, it is clarity. It is the shield that guards your peace when the world pulls at your wounds, your dreams, your doubts. You don't owe anyone access to the parts of you still becoming. Not every pain needs a witness. Not every plan needs approval. Growth doesn't require an audience to be real. It just requires patience, purpose, and the courage to stay true when no one is watching. So protect what matters. Let your future unfold without announcement. Let your healing happen without narration, and let your strength reveal itself not through words, but through presence. If this message reminded you of something you had forgotten, take a moment to reflect. Drop a comment below with just 2 or 3 words. Speak less, see more. And if you're ready to keep walking this quieter path of inner strength and self-mastery, subscribe now. We'll meet you again in the next chapter. You are becoming someone powerful. Keep going.